once young, they were already old. Since the dawn of time, the Elder have watched silently over a virgin world and all its creatures. Now they have assumed the form of mortals so they might walk amongst men to guide them. The Elder are an ideal. They embody the wisdom of ages, power of goodness and knowledge. But the Elder were not alone in the beginning, and are not alone still. Another force has existed eternally. In every place, in every time, an evil is loosed, whose sole purpose is to destroy all that is good. And in every time, and in every place, it is the task of the Elder to find and train a warrior, a champion to conquer evil. As the looming clouds gather, the Council of the Elder sits at their ancient table under the sign of the rose. Once again, they must combat evil that is lurking in darkness and spreading throughout the world. They await the word from Morpheus, the caretaker, whether the boy be deemed ready for the sacred rite of ascension to the Order of the Rose, and for the pronouncement of his sacred duty. The Odyssey begins. That plot's way stupider than the one I thought of.
Hi, I'm Greg. I'm the lead singer from Lipstick, and this actually is my favorite Kiss album.
I'm Steve. I'm the bassist. I'm probably going to say it's not, but, you know.
And welcome to the Lipstick panel. Today we are talking about music from the Elder. We have Ken Mills from PodKISSt.
It is so great to be here, and what an esteemed panel you have. And I know that anything I don't say, Julian Gill definitely will. So
We've got Dee from Tall Dark Stranger joining us.
What's happening?
And we have the man who wrote the book on the Elder, literally, Mr. Julian Gill, joining us on the panel.
God have mercy on my soul.
Julian, I am curious. Your opinion on the Elder seems to be a pretty mixed one overall. What led you to decide to write a book about this album?
You know what? I love that question because I get to blame someone else. It wasn't my idea. It was totally Tim McFate's idea to not necessarily write a book about the Elder, but to do a series of interviews with people who were actively involved in the creation of the album. We were celebrating its anniversary back in 2012, I think that was. So yeah, it was Tim's idea. And it was my idea then to package all of that stuff up into a physical copy so that people could take it with them into the toilet.
So it's less a book about the Elder and more a book about what went wrong.
No, it's it isn't really about what went wrong. It's about what went into making it, and if you want to then assume that something went wrong out of that process, you've got the evidence to support any argument you wish to make in those interviews.
So, typically for our episodes, first-time listeners might not know, but we go around the panel and briefly talk about our history with the album and the band, and sort of our general thoughts on it. So let's keep going with Julian, your first experience listening to the Elder and your overall thoughts on it.
Uh-oh, I'm encroaching into monologue territory here.
Just go for it.
So, obviously with becoming a Kiss fan in 1985, I could not find this album in stores for the life of me in upstate New York where I was living at the time. So it became a mission. As I went back and bought every album in the catalog, this one ended up being the one I could not find. I could not experience it. It obtained mythical status for me because I couldn't find it. I thought it was a figment of people's imagination. I thought that Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley had bought every copy up so that no one could hear it. So
I pulled an ET on Atari on it.
I'll completely get rid of it, edit it out, and I eventually had to go into the back of a Hit Parader magazine or Circus, and they used to list all these places that you could order import singles from, particularly from Japan. So I finally got a copy of the Oath single from Japan with, I think Escape from the Island was on the back of it. So that was my first interaction with the music itself. And, when you hear the Oath, without any context of the rest of the Elder, you're like, okay, this is pretty rocking. So I was happy. I was like, okay, this is a great album. Why can't I find it? Then finally in math class one day, I was talking to a friend and saying, I just can't find this Elder album. He said, I've got it. I will trade you. You give me 2 albums. I will give you the Elder. I'm like, oh, that sounds really awesome. I really want the whole thing. He's probably thinking, schmuck, I'm going to get 2 albums out of this idiot for the Elder. So I did give him Def Leppard's On Through the Night and Van Halen's 5150, and I got a cigarette-stained copy of The Elder on cassette. I went home again, starts off with The Oath, and then it went very strange, and I'm still coping with those feelings 30 something years later. So, that was my first interaction with it. I was flabbergasted to the most part, but there was some really good rock music on it, and there was some pretty weird stuff on it as well, which as a 14, 15, 16-year old didn't necessarily have any context. So I think my mission to find the album is far more interesting than my thoughts about the album.
Dee, did you have an epic Odyssey-esque journey finding the Elder? Or did you just like, nah, I just bought it on release, it was alright?
If I'm not mistaken, this was one of the ones I got as a Japanese import, and it wouldn't have been on the internet in that year, so must have also been through some sort of someone who advertised in a magazine, some import company or something. But I remember getting Killers, and I think this one too, because I do not believe it was available in America on CD at that time. But I had already been aware of it before I heard it. I already knew and World Without Heroes, which I liked both of those. Um, hmm. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I'd have to agree with just the idea that overall it's a little confusing. It definitely has its bright spots, but it's a lot to digest.
Steve, how about you? What was your introduction to the Elder?
I too got the Elder mail order from Asia. The difference with me was I was attempting to order a small child and was supremely disappointed. In the end, the album was pretty good and maybe worth it, but I sometimes wonder at the world that might have been. No, Greg lent me a copy of the CD 2 weeks ago. He had made me listen to it prior as, like, Steve, this is my favorite Kiss album. You should listen to it. It's like The Wall. And I listened to it, and the only thing I really retained from that first listen through was, I am just a boy, which I sometimes gets stuck in my head still.
The lesson here is if you're trying to buy an Asian child, don't look for one named the Elder.
It's a terrible name for a child.
But also, Steve, your favorite album of all time is Pink Floyd's The Wall. So this is that producer's direct follow-up to that.
It's true. Like,
so this is The Wall 2.
When Greg mentioned that, like,
Wow.
this is The Wall 2, The Elder 1, I was pretty excited. But, like that Asian child, I was disappointed.
All right.
Right? Pretty much.
Well, Greg, a lot of the time you will hear Paul Stanley say things like, The Elder is a good album, it's just not a good Kiss album. And I can agree with him on that. But when I was at the Vault with Gene Simmons, I had him sign The Elder, and I told him that Paul and he were both wrong about The Elder, that it's a beloved classic. It's something that a lot of fans love. And he says, well, it's not that we don't like it, it's just that it didn't do very well. It was the first time that I really heard him be completely honest about it. You know what I mean? That it really comes down to how well did it do. And then he says we were doing it for the wrong reasons. We were trying to impress the critics. But having said that, this is one of my favorite albums of all time. And there's been times in my music fandom where this has been an album I didn't really care for, but I loved it from the first time I heard it. But then just as things go over like a 30-plus year relationships, there's times I'm more excited about it and times I'm not. But it's one of these albums that when I'm looking for hope, I find a lot of hope and hope-inspiring type themes within the album. You know what I mean? Plus, it tells a story.
What are your thoughts on the album cover on this one, Ken? I mean, we don't have a picture of the band at all on it.
Yeah, and I remember getting it and thinking, well, okay, it's a door. But that wasn't all that weird for the 70s. There was a lot of really screwed up and great album covers from the 70s, right?
Right.
So I was used to it. But it was weird that this is really the first time that we saw an album cover without Kiss on it. And it was very strange. If you hadn't had the Kiss logo up front, you never would have picked this one out of a pile of potential Kiss albums and said this one's it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have, if not for the logo, how would you know?
Right. And it was also one of the first albums at that time that didn't come with a sheet advertising. You can get a Kiss poster and a Kiss lunchbox and a Kiss this and a Kiss that. It was very different. I think that the artwork holds up over time, but at the time it had a bunch of us scratching our heads. I know that I had graduated from high school at this point, and I was just so happy that this was not a dance album. And like, I love Kiss Unmasked now, but at the time I really disliked it because it wasn't what I wanted from Kiss. I remember I dropped the needle and the first time I heard The Oath and it had guitars. And those guitars don't really sound like Kiss guitars. It doesn't sound like any other Kiss song, right? But it was hard rock. And at the time, I remember I'd play poker, with the guys. It was Northeast Ohio, and it was the winter time. You know what I'm saying? So if you went, whether you're playing Dungeons and Dragons or poker or going bowling, and you'd eventually all get together and play cards or do something. It's the middle of winter. You got to drive through 4 feet of snow, so you kind of get stuck in and just hang out, right? So
Right.
there was a bunch of buddies and myself, and there would always be Van Halen. It was extremely popular. Kiss had at this point ruined their reputation by doing dance music with that crowd, with the more hard rock crowd. So you have Van Halen and you've had Frank Zappa, and it was a different kind of stuff. But if I would have put Kiss Unmasked on, everybody would have said take that crap off. But as soon as they heard The Oath, it was like whoa, and it kind of turned on my little circle because there were some Dungeons and Dragons type guys in there, and Iron Maiden's album had already come out a little bit, from England. So it was a much cooler album in that crowd, the Dungeons and Dragon hard rock fan, than it was probably among anybody else at the time.
And I guess I'll go next since I am the next person on the list. This was a really special album for me. It's my favorite Kiss album. I was completely unaware of it even existing for a long time. Starting off as a Kiss fan in 2004, and then someone got me a DVD of Kiss My Ass, which is not the tribute album, but the like video compilation that sort of came with it. It came out as a companion piece, so there was like a bunch of old live Kiss video clips, and then like Gin Blossoms and Anthrax covering a couple Kiss songs on there. And I was just watching it and I thought, okay, these are all okay live clips. Nothing was really blowing my mind. It was all pretty solid and what I expected. And then they had a live clip of which was them lip syncing to the song without Ace. But I was like, whoa, this song sounds awesome because the sound quality was way better than those unmastered live clips. But the band looked cool. They looked like I'd never seen them before. It was interesting seeing them perform as a trio, but the song just sounded like an anthemic, kick-ass classic Kiss song from the 70s. Sounded like it could have been on Love Gun or Destroyer. I'm like, what? Why have I never heard this song before? This song is so great. What album is this off of? Why is it just called I? And so I went to a website called KissFAQ.com and explored the website and found out the story of the album. Like, okay, I'm going to get this CD. I'm going to find a way to get this album. So I drove around to basically every CD store in the area, and every clerk looked at me like I was crazy because this is like 2006, and I'm trying to find a CD copy of music from The Elder. They all thought I was insane for trying to seek out this weird esoteric album. And eventually I found a copy online because this was before I'd really started purchasing stuff online. But I ended up just finding it on Amazon, but still went through the trouble of going to a bunch of different CD stores because I didn't realize, you can just buy stuff on the internet. But then I think maybe part of the reason I loved it was because of how hard I worked to get the album. And what a journey it was just to get a copy of it. But I also, I grew up in the 90s, and a big part of my childhood growing up was playing JRPGs. So playing games like the Final Fantasy series and Chrono Trigger, which was all about epic hero's journey, saving the world, and there was a lot of musical similarities between the music from those video games and this album. So this was like the meeting of two worlds, my love of Kiss and my love of JRPGs meeting together. Even though JRPGs came out way after this album, it served as like a precursor to it. And so those things combined with, I love concept albums and I love the lyrical direction they went on this album, and I actually think this is lyrically perhaps the one of Kiss's top 2 albums lyrically, along with Carnival of Souls.
And Love Gun.
And Love Gun is number 3, right below that.
All those really clever lyrics about love guns. Unlike those dumb lyrics in Let's Put the X in Sex.
Right, of course. They're totally different. But yeah, I think, the passion I put in just trying to get a copy of it, how exciting like the look of the band was during that era with the short hair and Paul's purple headband. It was a distinct look. Yeah, I liked the story. I liked the songs. It's just I think there are better Kiss songs than necessarily the songs in the album, but as a complete piece, as an album listening experience, it is my favorite. So it's like the Gish of Kiss albums.
Let me go get the chair jar.
There's a chair across 2 chairs, and he's powerbombing through the chair.
You're not allowed to say Gish on this podcast, Greg.
Yeah, if I say Gish, I get hit with a chair, the steel chair. So gentlemen, what is your interpretation of the plot of this album?
There is the Board of the Elders, if you will, and they are a mystical set of beings who are to help keep balance on the earth and to keep the earth going, right? And somehow or another, there is a prophecy, and there is someone who, if there was any justice, would have been played by Sean Connery, who goes looking for a young boy. You can just see it, you know what I mean? Sean Connery going around like, now that's a sword, right? You can just see it. And so you would have Sean Connery bopping about the Midgard, or the old Arthurian type looking times with a lot of fog and dragons and all that, and he comes upon this young teenage boy who is the one, and he can see it, but the boy can't see it. The villagers can't see it, his family can't see it, maybe his mom does, right? But nobody else really can see that this is the guy who is going to bring about the prophecy. And he goes on a series of adventures, and he actually comes to realize how important it is to stand up and do what's right in this very dark world. So you've got the dark light, which Mr. Blackwell, he's evil. So basically it comes down to good versus evil, right? And it's kind of like Star Wars for all intents and purposes. This is really Star Wars. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi getting Luke Skywalker. And except that the big bad guy's not his father, right?
Right.
So that's really what it's all about. And the songs have meaning, like I think Just a Boy and Dark Light, all of those things are like sort of self-explanatory. It's like Below in My Belt and all that stuff. A little reference to the Tom Snyder interview with Days. It's all self-explanatory in a way. Under the Rose, the boy gets approved. World Without Heroes is possibly the Sean Connery type guy saying, I don't want to live in a world without heroes, And once the boy figures out that he goes from I am just a boy to I believe in me. Just some of the best music Kiss has ever had a hand in, to be honest with you. It works on so many levels. This is also the kind of album that if you play for anyone who's not a Kiss fan, it usually makes them set up and take notice, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, right? Depending.
Yeah,
Again,
either way, they're going to pay attention to it.
yeah, mileage will vary, right?
Julian, you wrote the book on it. What's the plot of this? How does the president get rescued from the island?
The plot, I think it's more about the loss of the plot. But if you want to try and think about the plot of the album, I'm going to just go and say that it is generic Bob Ezrin plot A. In other words, Destroyer done again in 1981.
So, what I it's hard to respond to that.
There's no plot. Boom.
That's just kind of a mic drop moment. I'm sorry. Is there a plot? I don't know. Gene Simmons says he never did drugs, but this album really seems to indicate otherwise.
So, Dee, what's your interpretation of the plot of this album?
Well, in order to lay it in any sequential order, I would have to listen to the whole thing. And since I'm not a full-time member of this podcast, I've been spared that fate. Um, I don't think Gene thinks in terms of starts and finishes. He's always talked about getting a very vague musical idea. Maybe the lyrics spell it out, maybe they don't. I think Gene is more about impressions of stories than he is about stories.
So Gene is more about like cool scenes than a narrative that makes sense.
Probably right.
Like there's going to be a really awesome fight scene and an explosion. Okay, but how do we get there? Who cares? There's a fight scene and an explosion.
Yeah.
Gene Simmons is the Michael Bay of rock operas.
There you go. Yeah.
Nailed it. All right, so Steve, what is your interpretation of the plot?
All right. Accidentally, Kiss wrote a really amazing plot that addresses all the deepest foibles of themselves and their own target fan base completely unintentionally. So here's the deal. Kiss accidentally wrote a rock opera about male entitlement. This is the story of a young boy who's repeatedly told that he is the chosen one, that the prophecies say that he is going to fight the great darkness and he's going to save the world. So he goes off to this mystical island where a secret order is going to train him so that he is ready to fight the evil darkness. And they tell him all this time, they're like, oh, the forces of evil are coming. You got to be ready for the forces of evil. And like he signs on wholeheartedly and he signs up and he, swears an oath to this group. And then just as time progresses and no actual binary great evil ever emerges, he begins to realize that this is just a lie that's been manufactured to feed his ego and make him buy into this status quo. And in the end, he flees from this order, realizing that they had done nothing but lie to him, and he dedicates his life to stopping evil, not by being the chosen heroic one who does one singular event that stops evil and saves the world, but by becoming the sort of person who just makes the world a better place. He devotes his life to saving the world through small, daily acts of kindness to all people.
Do what, hon?
I don't know. I think that's a pretty great interpretation of it.
That would be such a good plot if that's what they wrote, right?
Yeah.
Well, from what I've read, they kept the plot intentionally vague so you can interpret it however you want, or because they didn't, finish it.
Yeah.
I think probably the latter. They didn't actually write the plot. They wrote that explosion thing and said, "We'll figure out the rest later."
Yeah, and that's essentially true. I mean, I was kind of being crass when I said what I did. They did have a rough idea about what they wanted to do. They wanted a grand adventure. They wanted kind of Labyrinth meets Star Wars. So again, it was scenes, and that's probably the most accurate way of describing it. It's these big sequences rather than the connective tissue.
See, my favorite part of my interpretation of it is that there's a large time skip in the plot. Where my interpretation of it is, the Elder is ancient organization that is, a force of good against a force of evil in the world, and that whenever there's an evil force, they find some chosen hero and train that hero to defeat the chosen force, defeat the evil force, and so they find this, the chosen force of evil.
Evil, we must train you up to fight the chosen one. Wait, what?
What? So they find this kid on an island, who just lives in isolation on an island, pretty much on his own, but is deathly afraid of water. So just hanging on this island and afraid of water, thus why he never leaves. I'm like, nope, you're going on an adventure, get ready to travel the world, and we're going to travel to this ancient door, and you're going to go in, and you're going to have a Super Saiyan transformation and come out a total badass with a purple headband, and the amount of time you spent in that ancient door turns out centuries have passed because time travels differently, and now it's the modern era, and the president has been kidnapped by Mr. Blackwell. So you need to go to the island and rescue the president before the island explodes, and that's how you learn how to believe in yourself.
Are you a bad enough anachronism to save the president?
Yes. Like, that is based upon the little bits I've read about the plot and the songs themselves, just what I'm left with. That is my interpretation of the plot. Takes place mostly in the Middle Ages, goes into the ancient door, which is on the cover, comes out a badass with a purple headband, and then is like, sweet, now I need to rescue the president before the island explodes. I believe in myself now. End part 1 of a musical trilogy.
Yeah.
So the question I pose to the panel, would this album have been better as a double album?
Oh, I'm not sure you know what the word better means. Why would you want to inflict that on anyone?
No, no way in hell. It would have been a bigger failure. Honestly, may have really sunk Kiss all the way around. The record company would have looked at this along the way that they did of Xanadu. You know what I'm saying? It was just one of those things that we never should have done. And while it was in itself a failure, it would have made it doubly a failure, mixed in Dolby, I love. These ones go to 11.
The reason I think this would do better as a double album is there are a select few rockers on this album, and those songs tend to be better received by the fan.
So you mean maybe one disc that's more straight ahead and one disc that's more
No, I would
orchestrated?
say probably keep the balance about the same, but if you have an album's worth of rock songs, it becomes more palatable to the average fan. We're like, there's 8 really good rockers, and I think concept albums with stories, you want them to be big double albums. You want them to be epic, and so it doesn't feel nearly as epic when it's a single album. So if you have more space to tell the story, you allow the story to breathe a bit more, to be a little bit more coherent, and you also allow a couple more rock songs on the album to make it more pleasing to the fans, and then you just accept those weird musical turns as part of the narrative.
Well, I do feel we're missing this scene where he trains, but they couldn't get the rights to Playing with the Boys by Kenny Loggins, so they skipped it, and that's record industry politics once again.
I love that of all of the montage songs that you could have picked, you picked the, topless male beach volleyball one.
I've heard that.
Do
on
you
so
want to
many...
see Gene Simmons topless at this stage in the game?
Okay.
He had some moobs.
Different song, sure. No, actually, that song's so silly. And I've heard it on so many cartoon spoofs that I thought it was a made-up spoof song. I didn't really know that was actually a release on a major
that is
label.
absolutely the second best scene in Top Gun.
The second best? What's
Danger Zone? That Danger Zone intro is just so epic and amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's all right, but it's no topless volleyball scene. Julian, we're gonna have you cast the deciding vote. What is better, the Danger Zone scene or the topless volleyball scene from Top Gun?
My 14-year-old self says the latter.
So, Steve, Julian, do you think this album would have been better as a double album?
Go ahead, Julian.
All right. Yeah. I think if you go by Kiss's history and the previous 2 albums having 3 contributions each from Ace, if it was expanded to a double album, there might have been a couple more opportunities to get Ace more involved. So get some more Ace material on there, and that might have at least assuaged some of the weirdness. Maybe not, but it would have definitely had a more rocking output than most of the other stuff on the album. I think it needs more songs on it to kind of flesh out the ideas a bit more. It's just too choppy as it stands. And when you look at The Wall as a product or as something to measure a concept album by, while that's a very strange concept, it is at least linear enough that it makes sense to a certain extent. The Elder needs more, another side, at least.
Julian, have you ever come across the songs that Ace was working on? Because, legend has it, he was pushing for a more straight-ahead rock album, and I believe Reputation was one of the songs he had worked on around that time that didn't get chosen. But have you heard any of the stuff he was writing that was passed over?
Not from Ace. I mean,
Okay.
all we have is what Gene and Paul did in the immediate, time right before Bob came into the picture.
Yeah.
There's nothing from Ace. There is some reels of ideas, but nothing that was fleshed out. What was on the tapes and on the reels that didn't make the album is more rocking. So, it was kind of hopeful from that perspective.
So yeah, I think with a double album, you'd have more rock songs. You might have even had a Eric Carr lead vocal because they would have had more characters if they spread it out. Where they're like, hey, we need someone to sing for this character. let's have Eric sing it, and you might have had a very different view of Kistery with Eric singing vocals right at the get-go.
They strongly intimated that that was going to happen. If you were a member of the KISS Army back then and were getting the newsletters, they kind of suggested that there was going to be a new voice on the next album. And did not happen, sadly.
Steve, what about you? Would this have been better as a double album?
If they had done it as a double album without the intent of having it being Act 1 of a trilogy, then yes, they would have. I think they didn't have enough room to get a real plot into this album. A double album would have given them that space. But I think if you had told them we're going to do 3 double albums to get this rock opera done, then they would have just drug their feet more and written a bunch more songs that don't actually advance the plot and just sort of spin around the same drain of like, all right, this chosen one, he's getting ready to train and go off to save the world. He's totally going to do it.
So maybe you're suggesting 1 triple album then?
I doubt it. 1 double album, I think 1 triple album probably would have ended up being like bloated and just collapsed under its own weight. I think they could have done it in 1 double album.
Fair enough. Well, are we ready to get into this ranking?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. So coming in as the least best song from the best KISS album, we have Fanfare taking up the rear as the least favorite song on The Elder according to the panel.
What do you guys have against reeds?
He's an ineffective leader. Ben Grimm should have always. I'm sorry. Sorry. All I can say is I have never
understood that reference.
There you go. Hey, we're all brothers in geekdom here, I think.
We're all
nerds. That's great. I'm a nerd. I'm pretty proud of it. No, all I can say is I have never not skipped Fanfare, so that shows you how much it's worth to me.
I didn't understand the reference you guys were making.
Really? That's Revenge of the Nerds. You don't own that on Blu-ray?
Oh, that's a very problematic movie.
I mean, yeah, there's a...
It's called Being from the 80s, dude. Every John Hughes movie ever made is problematic, and they're still funny!
Yeah, but that one's, like, extra problematic.
I feel like Revenge of the Nerds has an awful lot of sexual assault in it. It's
Oh, I see.
It's a bit weird.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you know...
Consent is important, guys.
That's true. Wait a minute. Are we talking about a KISS record still, or?
Oh!
Whoops! Watch out.
Heyo.
All right. So here's my thing with Fanfare. It's the orchestra warming up the track.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for that clarinetist who never shows up again throughout the rest of the album. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
here's your warm-up solo, and now you can leave.
Mm-hmm.
And like melodically, there's not a lot going on. There's hints of Just a Boy in it, but that's about it. And so, me coming at this from the perspective of a guy who's a big fan of the Final Fantasy soundtracks, and comparing that with the orchestral work of Uematsu, it's like, oh, there's nothing here. This is just build, and then okay, 1 note, okay, that's it. And so it's not very when you have the power of an orchestra to do a track, this is the most bland decision you can make for an orchestra. Like, when Jim Steinman did Bad for Good the same year and he had an orchestra, he's like, oh, sweet, I'm going to do like this epic song about a storm, and did a full piece. So if you're going to bother to pay an orchestra, get your money's worth. And this song, it is literally just the warm-up, and that's it.
On a scale of the THX logo to the storm, it's a -3.
I mean, it's right. It's in between those two, maybe.
Oh, you're going to rank it above the THX logo?
Slightly. I like the Just a Boy melody. I like the wind chimes, and, I'm a choir guy, so I enjoy the Gregorian chant at the end.
That's fair. I don't have the THX logo. Closest I have is this one.
What drop is that even?
That's the Inception. Whoa!
Oh, you...
Which is Edith Piaf, slowed way, way, way down.
Oh, nice.
Yes, sir. In time with the number of levels deep that they were. It's all mathematical. It's pretty awesome. That movie is so
I'm
awesome.
looking for it. Ah!
Right. Sorry, Julian. We do this sometimes.
And Mr. Ken Mills.
Fanfare is not much of a song, but it really does kind of set the album, and you can hear the little sound effects in the background, the train and all that. Julian will speak to it much more intently than anybody else will, because I love him and he knows all things.
If this was your first, if you had the Japanese version of the album or the original mix, this was your first experience of the album. So it would have been a total WTF moment to put on a Kiss album and suddenly have a crumb horn playing.
Is that what that is?
That is, and if you think of Pink Floyd The Wall, you know that part in Young Lust, a collect call from Mr. Floyd to Mr. Floyd. I always kind of think of Bob Ezrin in there. A collect call from the Renaissance for Mr. Ezrin. The crumb horn, we'd like to have the crumb horn back, please.
Mhm.
Because what happens in the 15th century should really stay in the 15th century.
See, I love the instrumentation, and I just wish more was done with it. This is a song, my canonical version of it is the 97 remaster done by my buddy Joe Pamaccio, who Dee was on that episode with. And so for me, the canonical version is the intended story remaster version. So the Oath as the opening cut is very weird for me because I view it in the context of how does this tell a story. And so I think it's a cool intro to start with, something more subdued like that. But I just wish there was more. It really feels like a warm up, and I want more from it.
Well, I think we've really hammered that dulcimer home. Okay, guys, I gotta go. Sorry.
Hey, that's from the one you played.
That guy liked it.
We were just talking about Final Fantasy X before we recorded. So there you go. Alright, so next up on the list we have Escape from the Island, which all of us gave the exact same ranking to. All of us ranked it fourth from the bottom.
Weird.
So,
How do we jump up 3 spaces?
the math of the overall panel.
Oh, okay.
So if someone votes something lower...
I'm going to guess I'm probably the only one who put Just a Boy in the bottom 3, right?
Nope.
Ooh.
No. So Escape from the Island.
Spoilers.
Once again, this is my favorite Kiss album, so I'm going to be generally positive towards all of these tracks. I think this is a song where, in isolation, you play this for a Kiss fan who doesn't know it's from a concert. I'm like, hey, here's an instrumental piece from a Kiss album. You're like, yeah, this rock's pretty good. There's a cool solo. I like that driving bass. Drums are kicking butt. Some nice riffs. So there's nothing really weird about this one. It's just like just a cool little rock jam. A nice transition piece. I know that's, I think, Bob Ezrin playing the bass or the Fender Rhodes on this, and he's just killing it on this track. But that trio of Bob Ezrin, Ace Frehley, and Eric Carr, just knocking it out of the park and just sound very cool. It's a cool rock instrumental. Kicks ass.
Escape from the Island is basically our theme, our outro theme music over at the PodKISSt. And what a great track. There's nothing else like it in the Kiss catalog. Can you think of anything that this song is like?
Car Jam 81.
Yeah, but that's the closest you can get to it, right?
I mean, it's Kiss, doesn't have too many instrumentals in their
Right.
catalog, but I would say sonically, it sounds very much like Kiss from the first 6 albums. It's just a good, aggressive hard rock tune.
Mhm.
So I think it fits in pretty well with the overall sound of Kiss. It's just
Right.
they don't have too many instrumentals.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to say any of these songs are weird, do a search for Kiss Live at the Daisy on YouTube and listen to Life in the Woods live, and you'll see that what you think of as Kiss is not always the case. It's a very strange song.
Well, I think I recall this being the first Eric Carr co-write. So even though I don't listen to it a whole lot, that kind of, there's a special place in my heart knowing that the great Eric Carr made a little extra scratch in his pocket off of this song.
He also co-wrote your favorite track on this album, Under the Rose.
Like I was saying, Eric Carr, what a loser.
If there's one thing that Kiss fans love, it's people ragging on Eric Carr.
No.
Kiss fans hate that guy. What a piece of trash Eric
Can I
Carr
brag for a
was. Am
second?
I right?
Can I brag for a second? I do indeed have Eric Carr's autograph on my Hot in the Shade CD jacket. Yes, sir. That's it. No follow-up. Just
No
wanted to brag.
follow-up.
That's all. And this is the sound. There you go. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, you wanted...
There you go.
Congratulations, Dee. Great job.
Thanks, y'all.
Steve, your thoughts on Escape from the Island? This is the song where he rescues the president from the exploding island.
Right. So I think, as you know, as Greg was saying, that in the context of a rock opera, it loses a lot. By its own, it would have been a fine instrumental rock song. Not really my bag, but I think, honestly, on most Kiss albums, I probably would have ranked this one even lower, just relative to what else is going on. But just this one, you stick it in the plot, and it's like I wasn't invested at this point. When it came up to this song, I was like, all right, but what even is going on? Who's escaping from what island? Do I even care? No.
But is the boy a bad enough dude to rescue the president from an exploding island?
I don't know, is he?
Apparently, because the next song is I, so I guess he did okay.
There wasn't a sequel, though, so apparently he didn't.
Well, no, he did okay enough for part 1, but not good enough for, a cinematic universe.
The KCU.
Yeah.
That sounds like a top 40 countdown.
Yeah.
So, Julian, your thoughts on Escape from the Island?
It's sad to put it down so low in the ranking, but compared to the rest of the material, which does make a certain amount of sense, it just kind of loses out because of that. But it's the instrumentals that are recorded during this time that are the best parts of the Elder era for me. I do like it. I liked where it fit in the original track sequence, which was right after Mr. Blackwell and before A World Without Heroes. In that context, it fits. So, I like it. Could they have used something else like Heaven, which became Car Jam? Sure. Or they even had another untitled one that they could have thrown in there that became Black and Blues Promise the Moon. So great instrumentals, but not as good as the material with lyrics. And that's why I kind of put it down in the bottom half of my list.
And hey, one of the few songs from this album to appear on compilations in the future. Appeared on Killers in certain regions, I believe.
So Car Jam was not a derivative of the song Breakout?
No, Breakout was a derivative of Heaven, which was the instrumental, which was recorded during the Elder era just by Ace and Eric.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, Julian is our resident Kiss encyclopedia. So anything that we think we know, Julian will be there to correct us.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, whenever you need a bathroom break, just ask me a question. I'll go on for 5 minutes and you sort it out.
There you go.
I remember everything!
I understood that reference.
I know, you gave me that drop.
Yep. All right, next up on the list we have Mr. Blackwell. So this is one of the more divisive songs on the panel. Some of us ranked it pretty high, some of us ranked it pretty low.
If there's a clinker on the album, it's this one. Mr. Blackwell, it just seems silly and over the top. And some of those weird farty bass sounds in it are just kind of weird. And then there's the, is it singing about the actual Mr. Blackwell? Because at the time I remember he was like on the Today Show giving the, is it hot or not? Is it thumbs up or thumbs down on someone's, outfit? So it was weird. Why is Kiss singing about a fashion commentator? It's just kind of weird. It's just weird stuff.
I think musically, I ranked this one a bit lower because it's very sparse musically. It's very ugly. It's not a very pleasant song to listen to. But in terms of the plot, it does introduce an antagonistic character, which is pretty essential. They really needed it at that point in the album. And also, I do really like how this song, in my mind, establishes a time skip. Because I haven't read, or at the time hadn't read a script or a plot from The Elder, I read something that Julian posted a while back and read the script, and I'm glad I didn't read that when I first got into the album. Otherwise, I probably would not like it as much as I do. But my interpretation of the plot involved a large time skip where, this is all in the Middle Ages, and now it's present day, and there's some asshole named Mr. Blackwell who kidnapped the president. And so I really like that idea of a time skip and this guy being, maybe he's like some kind of demonic character, like a demon who's been around for hundreds of years, biding his time, slowly building his way into the upper echelons of society. And so I do like the idea of just this villain character. And, it reminds me a bit of the Beatles where they had Mean Mr. Mustard, just like a song about, yeah, this guy's a total asshole. Fuck this guy, am I right? And, I liked that Kiss did that here. It is the only weird thing I have about it is Gene singing it. Not that it doesn't fit the demon character, but in terms of who is who on the album and the different voices, it makes me wonder, if this should have been sung by someone else to have a different villain character. It's hard to keep track of who's singing what and what characters are who on this album. Like, who is Morpheus? What songs does he sing? Paul is pretty consistently the boy, and so you can track him pretty easily, but, who is Ace? What character is Ace? Is that Morpheus? Or is he just like some random schmuck on the street, like in Brooklyn, like, hey, look out, there's some assholes out there? But I like this song a lot. Weird bass tone and weird vocal effects, though. Not sure if it's grown on me over the years, but as a musical piece, this is probably the least pleasant.
Ace serves the role of the Eagles of Gondor. Right? Shows up at the last minute to take the whole endeavor to new heights. Could have been there all along, but chose not to be.
No, they couldn't have been there all along because the Eye of Sauron was watching, and they would have been stopped if they had attempted to do anything like that. Adjusts glasses.
Okay, but then that led to, blow the horns, and then after that they had to light the torches, and then they had to douse the embers, and all of those things. So you're probably wrong, but I don't really want to argue. God.
It's been a while since I've read those or seen them, so
Yeah.
I don't really know all the details.
Anyway, hey, we're talking about a song. It's not a great song. I never go listen to it just, on the spur of the moment. I don't miss it when I haven't heard it for a while. It's just one of the few that has a legitimate rock groove to it and a little bit of, attitude to it. I don't remember exactly how the solo sounds, and it's probably, I'm sure Julian knows, I doubt Ace played the solo, but it seems like they tried to go for a noise solo like Strange Ways or something.
I thought
those
the
are kinda
solo
cool.
was very cool because it had that interesting, like, Rush-esque percussion going on in the background.
Uh-huh.
So I thought that was very cool, and I just thought of this as we were talking about it. The bass tone and overall vibe of this is like a live Gene Simmons bass solo, where it's just kind of noisy and weird and isn't very melodic, and it's just meant to make you feel uncomfortable.
Mostly stays on one note.
And that's, I think, it gives you, like, what if the Gene Simmons live bass solo was a song?
Mm-hmm.
And it is cool, in that context. Steve, Julian, what do you guys think?
Well, I think the solo is Ace, actually.
Oh, really?
On that.
Okay.
But
Ace
Mr.
on
Black-
bass?
Ace on bass. Mr. Blackwell, I think it's just like it is God of Thunder for the album. So where I say
Yeah.
that this album is just a rehash of Destroyer with new songs, new lyrics, Mr. Blackwell is the God of Thunder in the album. And if you take the intro riff to God of Thunder and take those notes and just juggle them around slightly, you've got the main riff of Mr. Blackwell. I've
Yeah.
always said that it would be great for Gene in God of Thunder just to break into the Mr. Blackwell riff because he's right in the where he needs to be on the fretboard to do it anyway.
There you
And
go.
they're the same damn thing. So play around with it on your guitar or on your bass, and boom, same thing. But as part of the story, it needed a Jekyll character. Or which one's the bad one in that? I never remember.
Mr.
Mr.
Hyde is
Hyde.
the
There
bad
you
one.
go.
Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Or
There you go.
better yet, it needed a Gene Simmons demon character on it. So that's all it is. It's just a vehicle for Gene to be Gene on the album.
Dr. Stanley and Mr. Simmons?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep, that's the way to.
I'm not a real doctor, but I am a real nerd.
That is an entirely different band. So my take on this song is that it probably should have been way earlier in the album.
But then the time skip doesn't make sense, bro.
Yeah, but if you shouldn't wait until the 9th track to introduce your antagonist. You spend like the first 5 songs building up. You're the chosen one meant to save the world from the evil guy, and then like at the tail end of the album, you're like, oh, by the way, here's that evil guy.
There's no really no details about him. He's just like this evil guy. So he's there now, and you got to fight him, and you have like
It
one
worked
song
for
to resolve
Darth Maul.
it. It did not work for Darth Maul. Darth Maul was a terribly underutilized character.
But he looked cool.
He did.
Steve's right.
And
I
then
just
it
felt
gave,
like
it
arguing.
gave us Maul Stanley, the internet's original bad boy.
I mean, that is sort of a running trend with Star Wars, though. It happened to Darth Maul. It happened to Boba Fett. It happened to, what's her name, Phasma. They do like setting up.
It's almost as if Star Wars isn't really good at writing narratives.
It's almost as if Star Wars is mainly designed to sell toys, and a cool-looking character who has about 3 lines before they die is a great toy.
It's almost as if George Lucas still thinks kids say yippee.
I mean, still, that was like the late 90s as compared to a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Kids then said yippee.
True,
Yeah.
true.
That was a long time ago, dude. Culturally different. So,
All right, get ready with your nerd button here, because you just talked about Mr. Blackwell coming way too late in the sequence. In the original sequence, it was supposed to be the first song on side 2, which would have set you up where you needed to be with a lot more sense. You have to remember, they went back and screwed up the track sequence so many times. No wonder it's a convoluted mess that makes no sense, because Bob originally had an idea exactly sketched out to what was supposed to be where. So think of flipping it over, and now you're into the evil. Now it makes sense.
that's
got
actually
the-
really good. Wow.
You got
So,
the rest. You got the rest-
that to all the boys.
Just decide to hit the wrong one instead.
Julian, does your book include anything about the musical play that went around about the Elder?
Oh, the one that they did in Athens, Georgia, a few years ago.
Well, they brought it here. It was quite a while back, but I went and saw it, and I do remember one of the few things I remember about the show. I'm not going to try to say it was any better than it was. I thought it was really cool just because I'm a big Kiss fan. But they did do Mr. Blackwell, and they had to. I think they actually were making their greatest effort to make a coherent storyline, so they changed around some of the lyrics. And for whatever reason, I remember on this song they would always say, instead of "Why don't you go to hell," it's "That's why we live in hell." And he had all these minions dancing around him, and it was pretty cool for what it was. Yeah.
I have a Spinal Tap image in my head,
Mm-hmm.
or actually an Aussie image in my head. The little people dancing around on stage.
Yeah,
Yes,
there you go.
pure evil incarnate.
Exactly.
I will say this. I always imagined Mr. Blacko as a dude who wore a really cool suit. But this guy is probably pretty fly for a white guy.
It might be a precursor to Gene's character from his last solo album.
Oh, a precursor to asshole?
Yeah. He had a persona for that and nobody cared, so he dropped it real fast.
Right.
Was his name Asshole?
No, it had a name. It was him wearing like a derby hat and a red satin suit or something. I forgot what the name was.
I would say, for any Kiss fan who is embarrassed by The Elder, you just need to look at the Gene Simmons album Asshole and ask yourself, are you still embarrassed
Yeah,
by The
no
Elder? Out of everything Kiss has done musically, the Firestarter music video is, I think, the single most embarrassing moment as a Kiss fan.
Not
That purple headband wasn't so bad after all, was it?
The Firestarter video is the one where he has like the triple short mohawk thing, right? And they're an electronica band from England instead.
No, he's covering that song.
Oh, he did. It was actually Firestarter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So imagine Gene Simmons covering that
Yep.
song unironically, wearing a like rapper pinstripe suit
Sort
and
of a pimp
fedora with a
outfit.
beard
Yeah.
and a bunch of hot women in bikinis as he throws money around them.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's making it rain.
cars bumping, and also him rolling his eyes in the back of his head, trying to be cool.
I'm excited for this album now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is not on our scheduled list because
It is now, Greg.
oh.
It's Firestarter. but
You
instead
could
of
do a
being
whole
just,
show
like,
just on that
3
video.
creepy dudes in a sewer.
But that's a Gene solo album. That's not a Kiss album.
Ah, but Gene's solo album is one of the best albums so far.
Fine. You're doing this to yourself.
I
Steve.
know. I'm making my own bed.
By the way, on that album, he co-writes with Bob Dylan and Frank Zappa.
Yep.
Nice. That's actually pretty great.
Yeah,
And the song Black Tongue does have a really good bass tone, by the way.
it does.
You should listen to Black Tongue, Steve.
Nice.
All right, but
When we get to that album, I will.
yeah, but damn it. All right,
Oh,
moving.
bless my nippers, cries Harry. Bless them all day long.
Such an esoteric reference. All right, next up on the list we have Under the Rose. So
Interesting.
this song is, I think Eric Carr's, his biggest musical contribution to the album, if I'm correct. Julian, wasn't this mostly an Eric Carr joint, this track?
Yeah, musically it was him, and then Gene did the lyrics for the most part. So Eric is not to blame for its lyrical content.
Well, I want to give Eric some credit for jumping in head first and being like, yeah, you know what? I joined this band and I thought it was going to be an awesome, kick-ass, aggressive rock band, and instead we're doing this weird prog album. But instead of being like whiny and complaining, he's like, I guess I'm just going to help write songs for it. Like,
Again, with the oil of Olivier.
but, I'm going to give him credit for being a total team player right from the get-go. That is incredibly cool. Now, lyrically, this one kind of fascinates me because the entire theme of the album, and alright, this is going to be a deep dive into nerddom, so get ready for this.
Shouldn't have added that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to break my nerd button. It's W.
But this album seems a lot of it antithetical to the overall Kiss message, which is done pretty well in I, where it's all about like individuality and believing in yourself and living your life the way you want it. However, the Elder and the way their organization is set up is Catholic Church style organization where like you must pledge your entire life to them and give up your sense of identity and follow everything they say and sacrifice everything, and you must do as you are told because it is important. And that is very conflicting with the overall message of Kiss, which is believe in yourself, do your own thing, travel your own path. And so, my theory of what the plot would have done if they had continued is eventually the boy would have gone against the Elder and forged his own path and would have been stuck between the two worlds, almost like Spawn, where Spawn's like, I'm not going to deal with heaven, I'm not going to deal with hell, both these guys suck, I'm going my own path. I kind of feel like that's where it was going to head, given the overall philosophy of Gene and Paul and what they're about lyrically. And I think I was a hint of where it was going to go.
The Elder 3, Harry Potter and the Prisoners of Collectivism.
Yeah.
That was a real deep dive right there.
But that is how I. But like I was saying, Under the Rose fits well into the Act 1 structure of completely, worshiping the Elder and doing as this ancient organization tells you to. And so it's weird for Kiss to sing something about sacrifice and giving yourself all over to this, omnipresent organization. And that's why, lyrically, this album gave me a lot of food for thought. Like, where were they going to go with the story? Because this doesn't make sense with what they believe and what the band claims to be about and what some of these lyrics seem to be about. So I think they were building towards something that would have been pretty interesting. And it's a shame that the album didn't do better, so they couldn't continue to explore those themes. And the song has a cool Gregorian choir, so I like it. And nice keyboards. Good solo.
I did like the operatic chorus thing. That was pretty sweet. I guess, yeah. Choir
I
chorus
see
rather
why
than
you're
operatic.
partial to Gregorian
Yeah, I did.
Freak out! Hey, my contribution is this song sucks. All right, Steve.
Oh, wait, I have that one.
All right, I'm done talking about this crappy song.
That you need to modify that.
I will do no such thing.
All right, I'm done talking about this crappy song.
It works.
Forever Greg is done talking about this crappy song.
This one just seems like the one where they were trying the hardest to prove how classy they were, and it's just trying too hard. I don't like it. That's it.
You don't really think of a song that really has a bunch of monks chanting through it, doing the big chorus, right? But damn, I love a song that monks would sing if this is it. And I just love what the song's about and the great meaning.
I've always had a soft spot in my heart for this song. Maybe it's because it's Eric, and it seems to contribute the most to kind of making sense about the album. That it seems to kind of define some of the stuff that's going on. I like the background vocals in it, but again, it's pretty far down my list. It's it's good only because it involved Eric from the earliest part of his time with the band.
I mean, I think it has a lot of cool things musically. I like the keyboards. I really like Eric's drumming on this is great. Another example of Rush-esque drumming throughout this album. So it was, as much as I love Peter, and Peter would have been the absolute wrong drummer for this album. And so you really needed someone with more technical ability like Eric to make this material work. And I think he was just nailing it throughout the track.
Yeah, Peter Criss was on this. He would have gone from shooting Christmas trees and televisions to shooting producers.
Yeah.
So next up on the list, we have Just a Boy. The song that Steve remembered from this album.
Right? I
Steve,
sort of remember Under the Rose now, having listened to it twice.
well, but I mean, you remember.
Blah, 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 blah.
Well, I'm saying you remember this one before you popped in the CD.
It's true, just because that chorus is so silly.
So talk about Just a Boy, Steve.
This is so. I did find the main hook of the chorus of the "I am just a boy" is just very silly. So there were a lot of thematic plot things that they were clearly going for with the song, and I really get that, and I really want to like it. Unfortunately, I rank this one pretty close to the bottom because they didn't do a very good job of it. They've got all these cool components they just sort of mashed together in a way that doesn't really fit. They took their favorite puzzle pieces and crammed them together instead of actually matching things to what they should be.
See, I think this one is great, and you're wrong, Steve. There we go. This is a very silly song. I think a lot of this album, the biggest flaw that I see in it musically is Paul Stanley's falsetto. I think that is what escalates it into silly territory, where it's already kind of silly because it's a concept album. Those are silly just in general. But Paul Stanley's falsetto, especially on other tracks where he should be singing full voice to give it more energy, sounds silly. And this is a song where I understand you're supposed to be a weak, frail little boy, so you have to sing as if you're a weak, frail little boy. But
Well, when you hear Paul's voice now, I wonder.
Oh yeah, they should redo
I
it.
wonder how much he regrets not singing falsetto more often throughout his career. He might have bought himself 10 years.
I mean, he might have, but at least on the records, for how over the top this album is, I think that's what pushes it into Spinal Tap territory. I think if Paul Stanley sang everything on this album full voiced, I don't think it would be as ill received or silly. It still would be silly, but it wouldn't be in the Spinal Tap category.
Thought experiment. Everyone who knows this song, stop and think about Paul singing those notes in the chorus full voice. I'll wait. Okay, that could not have happened.
No, if this is like Paul Stanley Crazy Nights era singing that full voice, that is awesome. That is badass.
It is incongruous.
It is, yeah, it's incongruous, but it's still awesome. But I think this song, musically, I think the beginning of the song is very good, setting the atmosphere and stage. Once again, reminding me of my JRPGs of the past. I think it has a fantastic solo, which I think might actually be Paul. Like, very good, very melodic, full of punch. And, like, it is catchy, and it's also very well produced. The way the guitars and drums build to the chorus is one of the best sounding moments on a Kiss album. Just that rhythm guitar drum build to the chorus on this song, like, is some of the biggest, Kiss has ever sounded. It's just, I think, vocal execution, and once again, I think this is another example of if there were more songs to allow this album to breathe a bit more, I think this song would fit in better because it's telling a grander story.
I need some balls.
To summarize,
I think I agree with you about the solo. Even though it's a very simple solo, I think all guitar players should pay attention to it. Paul Stanley, to me, in some ways, is a better lead guitarist than Ace. He doesn't have the chops, but he's a better he plays better considered or composed solos that are melodic. That those were always the ones I wanted to learn right away. I was never interested in fast runs and all of that, but Paul is like Neil Schon or someone that writes melodies in his solos that are fun to sing along or play along with. But the first note in his solo, I've heard it too many times now for it to have much effect on me. But when I first started listening to this album, the first note in that solo used to give me chills. And there's nothing to it. Anybody could play it, but he wrote it. He chose that note, and it's just an example of putting the notes in the right place more so than showing the world how many notes you can play. Paul Stanley is very, very good at that when he plays lead guitar. So I only rank this song so high because of the solo. I don't really care about the rest of it that much.
But also, I mean, Paul is a guy who really underrated as a rhythm player, and like the punch he puts into his playing. And so, yes, it's a simple lead, but someone else playing that same lead, it wouldn't have as much emotion and power. So I would say he's, akin to like an old blues player like Buddy Guy or B.B. King.
Sure.
Where, okay, he's not really shredding, but what he's playing, those 5 notes are going to be emotive and just like stab at your soul.
Sure.
And I think that's, the kind of solo I prefer is something emotive and powerful.
Now I want to see B.B. King shredding.
Yeah.
Julian, did we get your thoughts on Just a Boy yet? I don't think we did.
No, you didn't. For the paradox that is the Elder, Just a Boy represents all that is good about the album and all that is bad. Let's talk about the bad first. The falsetto. It's horrendous. And in terms of what the song is about lyrically, yes, it makes sense in terms of the story, but to Kiss fans, they don't want to hear about just a boy who steers the ship through the stormy seas. No, all that stuff, it's just bunk. But now go to the good.
Unless the ship is his penis.
Well,
And the
yeah,
stormy sea is
I
the
am just a man.
I am just a man, and the stormy sea is your vagina that's all wet from my penis.
Come on, this is Kiss.
Or if it was a Gene song.
Dick, everyone's happy. So, what is good about the song? Well, again, what is bad about it? The vocals. What is good about it? The vocals. Paul was incredibly brave to step out and actually do a song in falsetto like that. What else is good about it? It is exquisitely recorded. Listen to that guitar chord at the top of the song. The background, little chimey things or whatever they are, or a triangle. It's just incredibly beautiful as a piece of music. Again, totally wrong for Kiss. I can't think of too many bands it would actually fit. But again, Paul and his execution, this is the one solo that we're not sure about. I don't think it is Paul. I think there's a ghost player on this album, on this song, and we've not been able to discover who that was. If it is Paul, and it could well be in his wheelhouse, there's just something about it that, we didn't quite feel really came across for, in comparison with everything else he'd ever executed on his solo albums or on some of the Kiss albums that he had done lead work on. So that one's going to remain a mystery. But in terms of the song,
I'm trying to think of bands that this would actually be right for, and I'm only coming up with Canadians. Like 3 Inches of Blood, I think they would do a pretty killer version of this song. They'd rock it up a little bit more, but they've got the dual vocalist thing that would allow them to switch back and forth between falsetto and chest voice.
Rush? Imagine how high Geddy Lee would sing Just a Boy.
Right? I mean, Rush, this is a little bit below their level. I was thinking Saga. The Canadian version of Rush.
This would be a great Saga album. It needs more keyboards, but...
Oh, they'd add it.
Yeah.
There's not enough bass in it for Geddy.
No, I feel like Geddy... that's actually the one thing I thought... I was listening to this album on the way over, and I thought to myself, this is pretty much a Rush album, except Gene is not playing complicated enough bass parts. If the bass was way more complicated, it'd be right in Rush's wheelhouse.
Now just imagine Geddy doing Mr. Blackwell.
So it would be just like Roll the Bones. He would just rap it instead. That'd be pretty great. I'd be down for that. Why did they have to break up before this happened?
Isn't the rap Alex?
No, I thought it was Geddy with like his voice pitch lowered.
Oh, maybe.
And I mean, what is whiter than Geddy Lee rapping?
Snow rapping?
Todd Rundgren rapping. The Individualist album. Yep.
Just a Boy is a song that Paul gives himself a lot of grief for. You know, I've read interviews or he'll mention it or he'll make a joke like, I am just a boy. But damn, it really sets the stage. How can you dislike this song? There's so much going for it. When I hear the songs off this album, like I said earlier, that they fill me with hope. And we've all felt this way. I'm just a person, I'm just a nobody, but everybody's somebody. And that's really what Kiss is about.
All right, so I think that's about it for Just a Boy, unless anyone has any additional comments on it.
All right, I'm done talking about
The
this.
song
crappy
is great.
Song.
The song is fantastic. Don't listen to that asshole.
Again with the oil of Olivier.
All right. Speaking of Paul Stanley making poor vocal decisions,
I was really hoping this was going to be speaking of oily.
sorry. Next up on the list we have Odyssey.
Odyssey is one of my favorite songs, period, in the Kiss catalog. Paul also gives himself crap about his vocal delivery on this because he's doing it's a different voice for Paul that you might hear in. He almost sounds like this in A Million to One a little bit, but not this heavy. You know what I'm saying? It's like Paul Stanley's voice dripped in syrup. God, I love this song. The lyrics are amazing, and they're extremely silly as well. But damn, it's everything I love about music is found in this song. Great track.
This song, I 100% believe, should have been sung by Gene Simmons. Now, when it comes to my overall Kiss fandom, I have a very strong preference of Paul versus Gene. Of my favorite Kiss members, Gene is probably 6th or 7th out of the 10 Kiss members. So I'm not super big on Gene overall, but what I have noticed is that when Gene is at his best, Kiss tends to be a much better band. Paul Stanley can carry Kiss pretty well, but two of my favorite Kiss albums are when Gene is firing on all cylinders and trying his best. One of them is this album, and one of them is Carnival of Souls. Both are considered musical missteps by the average fan, but Gene is engaged, Gene is trying his best, and Gene is being artistically true to himself. And so that is exciting to me, because when Gene does that, does it sound like normal Kiss? No, but there's passion, and passion behind the music, I think, always makes it better. This song, I think I read somewhere that Gene said when he was supposed to originally sing it, it was going to sound more like a Beatles-y song, kind of like Across the Universe. And if you think of Gene's solo album, he sang in that Beatles-y style, and it sounded pretty good. And Paul sang this as sort of an operatic thing, but I don't think Paul's voice was strong enough to carry it. If this was Meatloaf singing the song, it would have worked, because he had the vocal chops. And Paul Stanley, 3 years later, Animalize era, he has the chops for it. But in 81, he didn't have the vocal strength to pull up an operatic vocal. But if Gene had done more of a Beatles-y vocal with all the strings and stuff, the song would have really been a standout cut and might have been considered one of the best Kiss songs, period. And so I think it's a real shame that Paul was the one who sang this. I think he probably sang it because of narrative, I think, is the reason why he ended up singing it, because it made more sense for the boy to sing it. But it would have been much better musically if Gene had sung it, and I think it would have made the album much better for it if Gene had sung this song. But as it stands, very cool strings. I like the keyboards on it. One of the best solos in the Kiss catalog. And so musically very good, but once again, hampered by a weak Paul Stanley vocal, which is, honestly, I think this is really the only album in the catalog where you can really point to Paul Stanley's vocals as being a problem.
How about the last two albums?
I think he sounded live. He doesn't pull it off, but I think on those albums he still was okay. It wasn't like Meatloaf's last album.
I have to clear my throat when I hear him sing "Dangerous" on Sonic Boom.
I think he's still fine. I think it's he's hitting the right notes, and yes, there's some rasp to it. And is it as preferable as the stuff that came before? No, but I think he still manages to sound acceptable in the studio.
Well, I'd never thought I think your idea is probably correct that this really would have fit Gene's. I can just visualizing that, or not visualizing, but what's the sonic equivalent of visualizing?
I don't know, but
Auditorizing.
yeah.
Um,
But not growly demon Gene,
No,
but,
no, no,
but
the
melodic Beatlesy Gene,
kind of the breathy thing he did a lot on his solo album.
or
I
what he
think that
did on
makes
Only
sense.
You, his
Sure.
voice on Only
Yeah,
You.
there you go. No, that would have sounded good, and I do not like. I think the word or note that sums up that maybe Paul's approach on this vocal, well, it just didn't sound great to me. But when he says real loud and shouted voice, and it sounds like that disco song "I Love the Nightlife," where she says "action" about 6 times. That's what he sounds like on that line, and I can't stand it. But the best thing about this song is the opening drum fill, which was not Eric but Alan. Who, Julian?
Schwartzberg.
There you go. Very, very tasty opening drum fill, and that's the best part about this song, in my opinion.
Where was the song sequenced in most of the releases?
So it's kind of opposite in different releases, where it's towards the end of the original US version and towards the beginning of the remastered version, which is supposed to be closer to the ideal version of the plot.
See, that was one of my big takeaways from this one is, oh yeah, I remember looking up the lyrics on Genius. They showed this one at the end. I like, towards the end, the big epic operatic thing, I think makes a lot more sense than the version that Greg loaned me, which put it third, which this just does not seem to be the place to put the epic, triumphant, we are on a quest kind of song. When, much later would be a good place to put that, or right away at the beginning. Instead of fanfare,
well,
maybe.
I've never been used to a version of this where the Oath came first, and even though that's a better kickoff to a rock album by far than the Odyssey, I believe the Odyssey came second after fanfare on my CD. But
on mine, it's so it's fanfare, Just a Boy, then Odyssey.
Maybe that's what it is. But the Oath can't come first because that's when he's found his mojo.
Yeah, that's when he's entered the ancient door and he's gone Super Saiyan. It's like, I have golden blonde hair and I'm ready to kick ass, Frieza.
It's a way better introduction for a rock album, but it makes no sense for that song to be first.
Right.
Yeah, the Oath may have found its mojo as track 1, but that was Polygram losing their mojo and absolutely freaking out.
Yeah.
And saying, no, we're putting our rock song first. To hell with what your stupid story is.
Yeah.
Which, I kind of admire the ballsiness of that. We're just like, no, fuck you. We want to sell some copies of this.
Yeah.
But
yeah, they probably sat them down and said, come on, guys. You guys don't even have a story. We're putting the rock song first. It's not going to make it any more clear or any less clear. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever anyway. So if you want us to release your brown cover album, we're just going to do it that way.
Yeah.
What I'll say, I personally prefer Odyssey towards the beginning of it. I kind of like how subdued and kind of mellow the intro is, and how it's sort of like a gradual crescendo. Like it's slowly building up. Like Fanfare is just a warm up, Just a Boy, still very mellow. Odyssey is building it up slowly, and so you're doing this general rise, but then Only You starts to take you into a realm of darkness, and it starts to get creepy and more uncomfortable. So it does feel like you're going on a journey and a quest, and Just a Boy for me flows very well into Odyssey. They all flow together very well.
So Fanfare is the orchestra warming up and Just a Boy is the band warming up?
Sure, if you want to think of it that way.
I do not, sir.
But I enjoy...
Fudge off, you fuck.
I enjoy the song a lot. Generally when I do my rankings, it's always based upon the songwriting rather than the execution. And so even though I would have much preferred a Gene vocal on this, I enjoyed the cheesy, ridiculous lyrics. I love everything about it musically, like the keys, the strings, and that solo. I've had a lot of Kiss fans tell me that they never made it all the way through the song, and then when they finally do, they regret it because that's one of Ace's best solos.
So, do the different members of the band use similar vocal processing per project? Because the one thing that stuck out to me was whatever vocal processing they were using resulted in some hilarious artifacts, such as winged flight. I really enjoyed that line.
I think that's also his enunciation on the track, too. I think Paul,
if Gene had done it, would he have, sounded less ridiculous on some of these lines?
I think I think Gene vocally sounds pretty great across the board on this album. Like, there's not a bad Gene vocal performance on this album. Like, Paul, you can say that sounds silly, that sounds silly, that sounds bad. Gene, like, whether or not his songs are better is a different debate. But Gene doesn't. He steps up to the plate in all categories as a bassist, as a vocalist, and as a songwriter. Like, he's firing on all cylinders. And I think this is a territory where he's more comfortable than Paul because. Remember, Gene's a nerd. Gene's a comic book nerd who's just like was really excited that he became a rock star so he could finally get laid. But Paul is a rocker at heart. That's just who he is. He is a rocker. Gene is a nerd. So
Paul is a rocker who's just really excited that he became a cartoon rock star so he could appear in comic books.
no, Paul didn't even really give a shit about the comic book thing. He's like, all right, I guess that's cool.
I'm
I guess.
so excited to hang out with Scooby-Doo and Archie.
No, Gene was the one who's like, I get to hang out with Scooby-Doo and Archie. So I think I remember hearing like Chris Jericho talking about how he went to Gene's house and Paul's house and how different their houses are. And Gene's house has a room full of Kiss collectibles and just like, look at all the cool stuff. There's the comic books and action figures. Paul has one picture of himself in makeup in his entire house. But otherwise doesn't have any pictures of the band and just like decorates like a normal person versus Gene decorates like a nerd. He's like, check out my room full of action figures and comics, guys.
I feel like this sort of emphasizes how self-obsessed Gene is
Well,
relative
that
to
too.
the others.
That too. But also, I mean, like, think of it this way. Like, Steve, if Lipstick had made it big, wouldn't you want a room full of, like, all the Lipstick action figures and comics?
I mean, yeah, I do have a wall of show posters in my bedroom.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get where he's coming from, but I guess what I'm...
Every day I identify more and more with Gene Simmons, and it makes me sad.
But, yeah, I think that just shows to you, Gene is comfortable in this territory. Paul, to his credit, is very brave going out this way, but he is nowhere near as comfortable with it as Gene. Maybe this would have been a good song for Eric to sing on the album. Who knows? But I think Paul was the wrong singer for this track.
Back to the lipstick action figures. I think for this to be viable for a realistic Steve action figure, you'd have to have a subscription plan where every 6 weeks you get a new stomp mat because all of the other ones will be broken within 4.5 days.
Really, the subscription for the Steve action figures, you actually get a different hat in the mail to put on your Steve action
a
figure.
new hat and a replacement stomp mat every 6 weeks. I think that's a winner.
Yeah.
Oh, man, we should do that.
Now, we'll see what T-Public has for that. Any other thoughts on Odyssey?
Sweet drum fill.
Lyrically, it's a great song. I'm on the fence about whether Gene should do it because I actually quite like what Paul did. I don't think it's as tragic as he calls it. Is it the right sort of song for Paul to be singing? No, it's Phantom of the Opera-esque for him, and I didn't much care for what he did with that material either. But
Phantom of the Rock Opera?
I think he did great with Phantom of the Opera, but I think that's because he had the vocal chops at that point. I don't think he was ready for it at this stage.
At that point, he did, and even though I'm still not a big fan of how he approached it, he was much better at it. So. There's just some great lyrics in this song. It doesn't fit in. I think they just put it in because Tony was Paul's buddy at this point, and that's probably why Paul sings it. No, Gene, you're not singing it. He's my friend. And come on, Tony just did an incredible job writing this song. Listen to his version if you've not heard it.
Yeah, it's pretty great, and I really do think this is a very underrated song in the catalog.
I'm ignorant here. Tony who?
Tony Powers.
Okay, and he wrote it completely 100%?
Complete,
Yep.
100%.
Okay, cool.
Which is interesting on a concept album to have an outside songwriter write a song 100% without the band.
I mean, not if it doesn't actually matter to the plot because there is no plot. Where's that bomb drop? There, no.
That's the wrong one.
Steve's drops are to comic timing what Thomas Kincaid was to comic timing. And here comes another cricket sound.
But you're not going to use the bomb drop for that one either?
I don't actually know where the bomb drop is.
Why don't you label them?
It is labeled. It's nested somewhere.
All right.
Oh, I have it filed under annoying because I don't actually like it. No, what buttons am I hitting?
What's next, Gregster?
All right, so So the next song on the list is A World Without Heroes.
Wow. And that is what, number 4 on the list, or number what?
Yes, so we're in the top 4 of our ranking.
Okay.
So this seems to be one of the better received songs by Kiss fans. You know, it was on Kiss Unplugged, therefore people like it.
A World Without Heroes is one of the best songs that Kiss ever put out, period. As somebody who grew up loving comic books and the idea of heroes, and it's just a place I wouldn't want to live in, and it's just hard to fault this song, whether it's the unplugged version or this.
You know, this song has the famous Gene Simmons teardrop at the end of the music video, where Gene sheds a single tear.
Oddly enough, I find myself unable to litter for 3 days every time I see that video. I'm not really sure what's going on.
The crying Israeli.
I understood that reference.
This song.
Wait, I thought he was like Armenian or something.
No, he was born in Israel.
Oh, okay. I'm
So-
confusing him with a System of a Down.
I mean to tell you, son.
Oh!
Okay, listen, guys.
So this is, I think, the most dated sounding song on the album. It really sounds like early 80s, like a song you would have heard in a Michael J. Fox sitcom of the era. Like, he's having a bad day and the song is playing, like, in his bedroom as he's reflecting on being rude to his girlfriend. Like, but seriously, you should have voted for Reagan. Like, that's what I hear, is just a song that a Michael J. Fox sitcom of the era would have had in the background during a sad, more serious scene.
So I feel like I'm the outlier here in that I put this one second to last. I did not like this song. I thought the
You don't
lyrics.
like ballads.
It was the lyrics. I wasn't. A ballad nested in a rock opera is less of a concern than just like a boring ballad as the particular single to try to sell the album to teenage girls. But like this song just had really bad lyrics. These really vapid. A world without heroes is a world where there are no heroes, and there's no one that you can look up to without heroes.
So this one, they brought in Lou Reed to write lyrics
Yeah,
for it.
That's pretty obvious, isn't it?
I'm not sure now. I'm sure Julian knows the real story. My recollection of what I've read about it is Lou Reed was not brought in to write lyrics actively, but Gene saw this on a page of discarded one-off lyrical ideas that Lou had written and used it. Is that the truth?
Yeah, they started off this whole album with just song title ideas. Now, I would have to go back and read the book again, but my recollection is that they basically wrote this with Lou Reed over the phone. I mean, they called up and said, "We want to do a song like this," and he said, "Well, give me 5 minutes." And yeah, well, that's what
And he sent them a synonym exercise.
Yeah, 5 minutes, you get what you pay for.
Here are all the different iterations of the world: a world and without heroes. Just every order.
For me, I wouldn't say this stands up to the best ballads they've ever done. It is no "I Still Love You" or "Sure Know Something."
Oh,
or
Steve is
anything
gonna
like
hate that song. I'm calling the shot right now.
Really?
100% calling it, Steve. Your least favorite song from Creatures of the Night is gonna be "I Still Love You." I'm calling the shot. I'm Babe Ruth.
kidding.
I'm Babe Ruth. I'm pointing. Calling it now. You know why? It's slow and it's 6 minutes long. I'm calling the shot.
I mean, is it loud and slow for 6 minutes?
It is.
It is loud.
And it's got some of Eric Carr's best playing. It's got Robin Ford on the solo. It's an awesome song.
But I'm calling it now. He's gonna hate it. Calling the shot.
But on this song is Paul's best solo, and Sure Know Something being second.
I would maybe reverse the two.
Okay, but I just those two.
This isn't
So
Uno,
when you're
Greg.
a beginning guitar player, first of all, Kiss is a godsend when you're a beginning guitar player. But it's especially exciting when you can actually learn some of the solos as a beginner and play along. And Paul's solos are really great for that. But I think the guitar solo is the best part of this song, and I always thought it was, one of the cooler parts of the Unplugged show that Paul did choose to play that solo. But once again, just another example of putting the notes in the best possible place and making something, really memorable. But yeah, just on its own, if it didn't have that solo, it would be a little less interesting. I don't know. There just aren't that many sing-along choruses on this album. This is one of the few that you can, the melody is accessible and you can kind of sing along when the chorus hits. Hooky, I guess is the word. But does it hold up among their best songs? Nah, not really.
See, I think this one is just me being more sappy, where I can totally buy into the lyrics. It's just musically, it doesn't do as much for me as other tracks on the album. But lyrically, man, I play a lot of JRPGs, and magic has long disappeared from the land. This is a world without heroes. I'm like, yeah, if I'm viewing this through the context of just like a JRPG, I'm like, yeah, I buy into it. And
Do you get a tear in your eye?
I don't get a tear in my eye. I think that part is hilarious. That is one of the funniest moments in the entire Kiss career, is Gene shedding a single tear of sincerity, quote unquote sincerity.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good pop single, and maybe for me that's actually the most out of place song on the album in terms of how it sounds musically. But lyrically, I actually enjoy it quite a bit.
The most contrived piece of garbage on the album.
Ooh.
In my parallel world, where this is just an analog of Destroyer, it's Beth. It being released as a single is just a transparent attempt to replicate Beth in 1981 when they needed it more than they did in 1976. They tried to force something that happened organically back in 76, and it just, it bombed as a single as a result, because it wasn't the right sort of song, and you can't replicate Beth. It's Gene Simmons trying to be Peter Criss, which I don't know why he'd want that, but there you go.
Yeah,
Contrived.
definitely not as good as Beth. One of my all-time favorite Kiss songs. I understand they were trying to do Beth Part 2, but I think the lyrical and musical direction, it was too melancholy for it to really succeed as a single. This is a very good reflective piece, but I do not think it is a good, let's get some radio play. Let's all be somber for 3 minutes. That's not, one of the things this album is really missing, extend it out to a double album, give the protagonist a love interest, and then you can have songs about chicks and a good love ballad. Because this is a Kiss album without any songs about chicks to be found.
Does this album pass the Bechdel test?
There aren't any chicks on it. And so maybe that's what was missing, was some songs about girl, I really love you and stuff, yeah, love gun.
I feel like the phrase, there aren't any chicks on it, needs to be used more often in feminist lit theory.
But also, if they, just thinking about this now, if they could have had a female collaborator as a vocalist on the album, play another character, and you could have brought in someone else who has, some musical credibility and bring in some new fans. Maybe you bring in a Donna Summer, or
any number of the backing vocalists they had on their solo albums that were better than them.
Yeah, or one of them. You could have brought in someone to portray a female character that might have made the album more appealing. I really feel like this was should have been a double album. I think maybe midway through the recording process, they realized how ridiculous it was, and that's why it didn't end up being one. But this really feels like half of a double album to me. But next up on the list, we have Steve's favorite cut on the album. We have Dark Light coming up next.
Yep.
Steve, tell us, for first-time listeners, Steve is a big Ace Frehley fan.
Right.
He adores everything that Ace does, lyrically, musically, guitar-wise, vocally. I think Ace is your favorite vocalist.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I find it sort of fascinating that my general take on this band has gradually transitioned from, oh, great, it's a Gene song. That means I'm going to have to hear him talking about dicks and butts again, to, oh, great, it's an Ace song. That means I'm going to have to hear him not hitting any interesting notes with his voice. And this is one of those. Plus the fact that most of the music is the Jaws theme with a cowbell.
Which is awesome, because I think about this. The Jaws theme, awesome. Cowbell, more awesome. Jaws theme plus cowbell, Like, the awesomeness, I can't even contain it in my head.
It just conjures an image of a great white shark swimming through the water with a little bell around its neck.
Awesome. Like, I don't understand why you're not seeing how great this is.
Guys,
And
you hear
also-
that bell? It means we need to get off the beach. A killer shark is on its way.
Right. It's safer for beach patrons. It gives the shark a cool accessory. And let's not forget, this song doesn't just have cowbell. Think about those congas, dude. Think about the congas during that guitar solo.
It is important for the shark to accessorize so that you can include that in the DLC.
Right.
You know, everybody talks about how cool this song is because there's a solo, and it's got this conga drum beat in it. And like, if you took like the solo from Alive 2 or like Shock Me and just add congas to it, it would be a very different song, right? So it's kind of weird that this conga beat is added to it. It's very strange. And you gotta love Ace's delivery. You just gotta love it.
But, like, all right, this, unlike Steve, I love the Ace Frehley cuts on Kiss albums. I think they're fun. I think they're a nice change of pace. And this is, you know, mostly a straightforward rock song sung by Ace. So that's another lifeline to the old school Kiss fans. People are like, oh, for, I think the rocker fans, this song was a breath of fresh air. Like, thank God Ace is singing. There's an Ace cut. Like, for the way you're disappointed is the way that other people are excited. This is one of Ace's best solos in the catalog. It's cool, it's quirky, and the backing music behind it is fun. Lyrically, it has to fit in with the rest of the album, so it's, you know, it's a bit goofy, but I think Ace delivers the vocals very well. It's a cool song with the Ace Frehley swagger in the context of the album, and that makes it really fun. I enjoy the song a lot.
Yeah, I mostly give it credit for the solo and just overall injection of rock aggressive energy that you need at that point in the album.
The Dark Light is one of the most interesting songs in the entire Kiss catalog, written by Frehley, Fig, Reed, and Simmons.
It's everything bad that happens when Ace Frehley and Lou Reed get together, because lyrically, Lou just screwed the pooch on that song. Musically, it was great to begin with, and nothing changed when anyone else got involved. So for having token Aceisms on the album and having that great Ace solo, I agree with that completely. You know, it's stupid. It's a dumb ass song. But then again, it fits perfectly on the story of the Elder.
And here's the things like, oh, a dumb Ace song. I mean, there are a bunch of dumb Ace songs. Torpedo Girl, Wiped Out. Like, Ace.
Yeah, but it's like it's a dumb Ace song where it's like evil's happening rather than a dumb Ace song where it's like I banged a mermaid and I did some drugs off her fin.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? I can't even counter that. So here's the question: would Torpedo Girl be better on this album?
Torpedo Girl would be better on just about any album. I love that song.
So we need to, if we had Torpedo Girl, there'd be mermaids in this concept album. That's what's really missing.
Then you've got your chick quota.
Right?
You'd have Under the Row, ROE. Thanks, everyone. Listen, talldarkstranger.net. God, I hate myself.
You know what it is? Extraordinary.net instead of a .com.
The com is still taken after 15-something years.
Cyber Squatters.
Right.
Is it really Cyber Squatters? That's not like a bad dating site already?
I'm kind of afraid to look, to be honest. I just know it's not available.
Yeah.
Those men need to put on some pants. Oh, no.
All right.
I just feel sorry for Ace having to sing a line like, well, the skies are black and they're getting darker all the time. What, darker than black? I mean, what color is that called?
The question is, can it get any more black? And the answer is no, no more black.
None blacker.
I don't know. I actually like the lyrics. There isn't a song on this album where I don't like the lyrics. I'm fine with it. I think it's cool.
Greg digs cliches.
I mean, hey, this is a cliche-ridden album, but, you know, coming from Kiss and a band where there's almost a mythological edge to them, because this is still Kiss in the makeup. And so those, like, larger-than-life personas being incorporated into a grand mystical narrative is very fun. Because it's not just Ace Frehley, it's, you know, the Spaceman, and the Star Child, and the Demon, and the Fox. And so there's an extra layer that those personas bring to a concept album that really makes it interesting.
The spaceman is particularly upset that the stars have all gone out.
Yeah.
Guys, I can't navigate.
Wouldn't you be pissed? I'd be pissed if I was the spaceman. Like, what? All the stars are gone?
Did you like destroy the entire universe, you weirdos?
And I do love his really thick Brooklyn accent. Brooklyn Rage!
Brooklyn Rage.
But yes, next up on the list, we have Only You.
Only You is one of the greatest Kiss songs, one of my favorite songs. It's great, and this song's been sampled in rap songs and all sorts of cool stuff. It's just a great track. I love that Gene is not afraid to sing on it.
So I was listening to the PodKISSt episode on the Elder. There's 2 episodes, but someone on the panel mentioned that Only You was a really great introduction to the Elder. If you only had to play them one cut from the album to give them a feel of what they're in for, Only You is good because it still has good rock elements to it. It has some interesting changes in different sections. It has Gene and Paul on the vocals and the narrative being explained throughout the song. And so it's a good song where it's like a way to ease someone into the Elder, where fanfare might throw them off, or the oath might throw them off with the falsetto vocals. This song, if you're like, hey, check this song out. If you like this, you might like the entire album, is a really good point that was brought up. I like that it begins, with a minor chord and just that sort of descending riff. Very cool. Once again, Gene nails it vocally. Paul sounds good on this vocally. And some more, Rush-esque drumming from Eric Carr. So this is, Kiss getting a little proggy, getting a little weird, but still having elements of, being a rock band. The song still rocks. And man, what great guitar tone on this track. Like after the thin tones on Dynasty and Unmasked, like that is a beefy, badass, great guitar tone.
What I liked with this one is that so the boy in this album is meant to be the author / listener self-insert character, right? Like you're supposed to identify with the protagonist of this album. And then in this song he's getting called a man-child. Which I feel like is so appropriate for so many Kiss fans.
Well, all I can say is it just never left enough of an impression on me to listen to it over and over again. So it's not one of the ones I usually queue up if I put this CD in. It's been a while, though. Maybe in fairness, I should go back because I don't remember any cool drumming bits on it. So maybe I need to listen again.
Yeah, I think this is a great example of, the band just killing it. Just Gene's doing great, Paul's doing great, Eric's doing great. I'm pretty sure Ace is on the track.
Ace may or may not be doing great.
But yeah, this one does have, also just some cool guitar parts to it. So there's a lot going on, but I think this is a great song and maybe the best Gene vocal on the album, I would say. Julian, what are your thoughts on Only You?
I think it's one of the best Gene vocals, period. I mean, it really has him getting outside of his, Cookie Monster persona that he had been in for much of his time with Kiss, and just doing something that works way better than A World Without Heroes does. A World Without Heroes is contrived, Only You isn't. And Only You has so many connections with very early Gene, with it originally being called Eskimo Sun. I think he wrote that back when he was a teenager. So once I'd learned more about the history of the song and where it came from and its execution, it's a fantastic song, period.
And the double-tracked Gene in a Beatles-y style sounds very good. Like, I know that's him probably going for a John Lennon kind of vocal in terms of just the tonality that he's getting. And maybe that would have made A World Without Heroes shine better if he had a double-tracked John Lennon-esque vocal instead of that very dry vocal that he had on that track. Might have made that track shine a bit more. But yeah, this one, not as much to really say about it in comparison to the other tracks. I think because maybe the execution is so good. It's like, hey, they got this one right.
It's a song. They did a pretty good job of it. Sounds like Kiss.
All right, so next up we have the second to best song on the album. My personal favorite. So my favorite song from my favorite Kiss album. And this way, you can't accuse me of rigging the votes, Steve.
I mean, that won't stop me. I can do what I want. This is America.
If I were rigging the votes, this song would have won, but I didn't. So don't accuse me of being a liar like you have in previous episodes, you jerk. The second best song on The Elder, according to the panel, is
Just
I.
a Boy,
No.
making its second appearance.
So good it had to be on there twice.
Greg.
No, it's I. This is the only song from this album that Lipstick has covered. We closed out our Kiss tribute set with it a couple months back. I already went into my spiel about how this was the first song from the album that I heard and was really impressed by it. Sounded like classic Kiss. I'd never heard it before. Song has a lot of great things going for it. Once again, sounds like classic Kiss, sonically. Great drums by Schwartzberg again. I do think it's a bit silly that Bob Ezrin insisted that the drums needed to be double-tracked, and that's why Eric Carr didn't play on the track. Because the drums aren't hard to play, but it would be hard to double them. But by that same token, as silly and self-indulgent as that seems to double-track drums, this is the best drum track on the album. This does sound the best, drum-wise. So they have that going for it. Good vocals between Gene and Paul. It's nice when the two of them are singing on a track back and forth. And lyrically, I'm all about it. This is the epitome of shonen believe in yourself music done by a glam band. So I'm all about it. I remember when Steve first heard the song for our cover set. It's like, oh, I see why Greg likes this one.
Right? I was like, oh, this is like Greg's thesis statement as a Kiss song.
You know, we were talking about earlier when I was talking about Just a Boy, I said those times you feel unsure of yourself, and Kiss is all about I. Like, they could have sang "We Want to Rock and Roll All Night" or "We Love It Loud," which they do say that in Crazy Nights, but Crazy Nights. But Kiss has always been about I, from that center point of view. I'm going to do this. I believe in me. It's my life. And this is the song that's perfect for that. And we even have Paul doing his Elvis Presley imitation when he does "I don't need no money." Nothing to hate at all. It's good, energetic. It's a bit silly with the Addams Family, finger clicks, but great fun track.
I put this at spot number 4. It's not I think the best song on the album as the album, but it's a solid positive Kiss song that works really well as they placed it, intending it to be, this is the end of Act 1, there's going to be 2 more acts to this, so this is the positive ending of the first one so that everybody's in a pretty good place and excited to move on to the next part of the story. Just so happens that they didn't do the rest of it.
Hindsight is always 2020.
Well, it's one of the more fun and melodic, hooky songs on the album. One of the only hooky songs on the album. I like Paul's Elvis impression in the third verse. I like the trade-off vocals. They've never done enough of that, in my opinion. Julian, is there a story as to why there's no solo?
No. Not
Really?
that I'm aware of, just that there is none.
Because it seems like there's a live clip out there. I know there's a live clip with Ace.
Yeah, from Fridays.
When he played the solo to The Oath, but I can't remember if he played a solo on this song, but there's just all this empty space, and I just don't understand why
finger
Ace
snaps,
is not...
bro. You need those finger snaps.
Well, yeah, and Lord knows those finger snaps will have their place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but it would have been a great place for
Eric
solo.
Carr is on the track, so that's why it's not going to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Original lineup only.
Right. It just, I don't understand leaving an enormous open space in a song when Ace Frehley is in your band, so that's strange. But anyway, it's a catchy song. I do believe that about halfway through the chorus, when it starts, I believe in me, and then repeats it, it could have gone somewhere stronger. I think when it goes something more, it loses gas. So to me, that change weakens the chorus, but still, it's one of the more memorable songs on this album.
Yeah, the production on the chorus is very interesting because it definitely sounds like most of the song sounds like a classic Kiss song, but that chorus sounds a little bit like a Gregorian chant. mixed with Kiss.
The
so that's
chord change is a little bit
yeah,
odd.
it's a little bit dissonant. I think it works, but I do hear what you're saying. It's definitely, an odd bit of Elder production creeping into a straightforward rocker. I can say this easily. This is my favorite song that Gene Simmons ever wrote. When it comes to Kiss members, like I said, Gene is usually lower on my list, and that's why it's surprising me how much I like this song, knowing that Gene wrote it. But like, knocked it out of the park, and I played it live in multiple bands, and just a great tune. I really appreciate the finger snaps because they were trying to do something different. And I really like the idea of like Kiss sitting in a room like, guys, we're gonna make finger snaps like the next big trend in music. Like, we're gonna have finger snaps and and then everyone's gonna start doing it on records. We're gonna be trendsetters with this finger snapping thing.
You can just think of it. They were like, what, 40 years ahead of time, and then minimalist pop via Lord started to do that sort of thing.
Kiss did
or
it
they
first.
just watched the West Side Story.
Right.
Well, a few years later, George Michael comes out with Father Figure, and it has what in the intro? Snaps. You do the math.
I will say, as we're talking about missed opportunities, one of the biggest missed opportunities in music was Elvis not taking the lead-in role in West Side Story. That would have been his best film, and he would have nailed that. And the male lead in West Side Story was kind of weak and didn't really offer that much from an like emotive acting perspective. And Elvis was actually a pretty good actor. That is a huge missed opportunity in music, as we're talking about an album full of missed opportunities. So, Julian, your thoughts on I?
Yeah, just to keep hammering away at my Destroyer parallels, shout it out loud. Done again. Again. Same sort of song, same purpose, same trade-offs. Kind of the same message as well. I love this song.
So wait, which song is Rock and Roll All Night?
That wasn't really on Destroyer, unless you count like the very brief. You know what? Fanfare is Rock and Roll All Night. The brief little intro thing.
Yeah. So, I love I have a really big problem watching it or listening to it now because I always get images of the video that they shot for it coming into my head. And this surfaced a few years ago. You can go on YouTube and see it. And they're basically on a soundstage with a renter crowd that doesn't look like a Kiss audience. And at the end of it, they've got the band up on the audience members' shoulders, and they're bobbing up and down like little ships on the ocean. And it just is so incongruous for everything you'd think out of Kiss to see those images of the band performing that song the way it is in the concept video.
Well,
so that ruins the song for me.
That seems appropriate, though, right? They're continuing on with the Odyssey on the ocean.
Well,
bouncing up and down on people's shoulders while Ace grins like a drunken fool.
Right, yeah.
Not so much.
Like,
but,
the boy goes crowd surfing, or I guess regular surfing. Surf Ninja Ain.
As a Kiss fan,
that's a
it's
great
the one,
reference.
the one song we've been screaming for years.
Sorry. The one song we were screaming for years.
Kiss fans have wanted it to be performed live by the band for years. Gene's now doing it out on the road. Kiss did it out on their cruise, and it was very cool to finally get that live. And that's as much Elder as I think we'll ever get to experience live these days.
Glad to see that Gene is playing it on his solo tour, his on-ending or never-ending solo tour.
Or soon to be ending with the Kiss 3-year tour coming up.
Yeah, but I think he'll keep going. I really think that he'll keep going with it because Gene doesn't know how to rest, right?
Right.
And if he's going to do something, I'd rather have him do a couple shows with the Gene Simmons band while he's resting than the Gene Simmons car wash. You pick. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just hope that we get a live album from them. As a matter of fact, we need to crowdfund it. We need to figure out if he would do it, if we did a crowdfunding thing. You know what I mean? Put in $15, you get the CD, right? Actually, it'd be $20. You get the CD, and you get the first of 1,000, right? And then boom, that should pay for it. Then anything else you saw would be gravy, right?
Right.
So, a bit off topic, but I want a Gene Simmons band live album. So.
And to answer the other question, Rock and Roll All Night for this album is the point when you take this piece of crap out and put in Dress to Kill.
I mean, Rock and Roll All Night for this album is the very end of I, where Gene sings, I want to rock and roll all night.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, so we're getting to the number one song on the album. but I'll go through the list again for those not paying attention. You know what we should do? We should build the narrative of this album based upon the ranking. All right, so that's what we're gonna do. All right, we're starting with Fanfare.
It's the intro. It's a fanfare. It doesn't have a plot.
All right, Escape from the Island. It's like in media res, like stuff is going down. You don't understand what, but you're escaping from the island. There's
I think
explosions.
that's cheating to use en media res here, Greg. We got to go in chronological order.
Okay, so what's happening? Why? Who's escaping from the island and why, Steve?
I guess he's got more of a Conan-esque backstory where he's he was captured at a young age and forced to work the grindstone, and now he's escaping.
All right, so he's escaping from the grindstone, but then he runs into Mr. Blackwell.
Yep.
And Mr. Blackwell's like, "Hey, don't escape."
Don't escape from my island.
But then, under the rose, he does escape, and he finds the Council of the Elder.
All right, yeah.
And they're like, "Hey, you have to take this oath and be in our organization." But that's followed by Just a Boy. And he's like, "But wait, does that mean I have to, like, get on a boat? Because I'm scared of sailing." And it's followed by Odyssey. It was like, "All right, well, I guess
Too bad, get on the boat, kid.
Too bad to get on the boat." And then A World Without Heroes, where I guess like the guy is talking to him like, "You know, it really sucks how there isn't heroes in the world." So he's on the boat.
But he's like, I'm Conan on a boat.
Right, so he's Conan on a boat. Then it's Dark Light, where it turns out there's a shark. And the shark is
Shark's got a cowbell
the
on.
shark is Ace Frehley with a Brooklyn accent. With a cowbell on. And it's like, "Hey, the sky's really dark. There's probably a storm coming. Maybe you should turn back."
Get out of my ocean.
And then there's Only You, which means
only the boy is able to fight evil shark.
Well, no. It's like Gene is the Morpheus character. It's like, "Hey, just calm down. Like, everything's gonna be cool. You're the chosen hero, so we have to keep braving the storm." And then and that's on our list. He's like, "Yeah, you know what? I believe myself. I am confident I can go on a ride in a boat." And then it ends with the oath, where he's like, "Okay, I got off the boat, and now I'm taking the oath to join the Council of the Elder." And that is the story of the ranking version. So
you know what makes as much sense as any other version I've heard today.
So the oath is voted by the panel as the best song on the album. Not my favorite, but the collective favorite according to math. So, gentlemen, Julian, I'm going to let you go first because you said you had a rant prepared for this. So you just go for it, man.
Oh no, I had a rant about the album itself, which was my discovery of it. So
okay,
the Oath being the first song I ever heard from the Elder remains my favorite song from the Elder. When I got a guitar, the first song I tried to play was the Oath. The first song I tried to learn was the Oath. To this day, I just love the song. Is it a great song? No, but in terms of its style, it's just a powerful song. So I love it. Loved it then. Love it now. Always will.
The Oath kicks so much ass, and their performance of it on Fridays is just amazing. And I love that Kiss has brought this back, even if it was just on the Kiss cruise. I think that Kiss could play this on any stage, on any tour, and fans would just go ape shit.
I feel like this song, for people who didn't really know the album, if you put this on for a metalhead in 81, I think this gave Kiss immediate street cred with just that riff and double bass drumming. And you're like, wait, hold on, what? Kiss got heavy all of a sudden and got badass. They're singing about like swords and other metal themes. Let the blade of a sword I am forged in flame, fiery hot. That's some metal shit, bro. Like that is metal. Like that is straight up a Dio song. This song should have been sung by Dio. There is a cover of the song by the band Sack Trick, where the guy sings in full voice the entire time, so there's no falsetto section. And it sounds awesome. Like that, and Paul Stanley, in the 80s, could have sang the entire song full voice. But he just didn't have the vocal chops at the time. And I really think that is the one thing holding back this cut, is the falsetto section. I think if he was singing that full voiced, this is sure just a badass metal tune.
The reason just to take a detour here, the reason Paul Stanley doesn't sing anymore the way he did on this album when he, at this stage of his career, he still had tones, is because, in my opinion, they started tuning up to standard on the road for a few tours in the 80s after the makeup came off. And to me, that just smacks of ego. Let's show the world how high I can sing. But most of these songs were recorded a half step down. I think that was the single greatest mistake of Paul Stanley's career. He can't sing falsetto now. It's gone. When you hear him on Modern Day Delilah try to hit a falsetto note, it's not quite what it used to be. I understand that falsetto doesn't necessarily fit into most rock settings all that well. It's more of an R&B device, and it is true that it kind of makes this song, a little less of a heavy rock song like it could have been.
It's lacking some balls.
Yeah. I think it would. I'd have to hear the version you're talking about. To me, trying to picture anyone singing those notes full voice just sounds like it would hurt to listen to. But all I can say is if Paul had done that, this might have been their last album, because we are hearing now the consequences of him singing out of his range for 50 years. So that's my opinion on the whole thing. But it does have the most aggressive hard rock energy of any song on the album, and just is, one of this and I, to me, would be the only ones that would make you raise your fist in the air and go, yeah, so I think it has the most Kiss spirit, probably, this and I.
And I would say this. I think this song is heavier than anything on Creatures. I think Creatures is a heavier album production-wise, but that riff is heavier than any of the riffs on that album. And that, double bass that Eric Carr is doing, that is some of the heaviest drumming the band has ever done. So I think this is one of the heaviest cuts in the catalog. Maybe not in terms of production, but just in terms of the riff itself and the drumming. I would say this is one. And Steve, you like this one the best on the album.
Yeah, I put this one at the top. I thought this was a good song. I recognize why several of the different versions of this album resequenced this one first. This is, if you're just trying to move albums, this is the one that if somebody pops it on in a friend's house or at the record shop and they hear this is the one that will sell the product. So it was probably a good choice on the label's decision to do, a good decision by the label to do that. It's a solid rocky song with a, epic over the top lyrics.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kick-ass metal song. I think there's, I do enjoy the bridge with the weird keyboard. I think that part is awesome. I think that part Tony Powers wrote. So that's very cool. But yeah, this is just, it's a great tune. I kind of wish Ace's solo was left in, because you hear it in the couple times they played it live with Ace. But yeah, it's a cool song. I think I rank I above it because I think I is a better song, personally. I think I has less weak parts than this one does. So this one definitely kicks more ass. But lyrically, there's not really a cool message that resonates with me the way I has that message. And I has the best Paul Stanley vocal on the album. There's nothing on I where Paul Stanley sounds embarrassing. But every other track in the album that Paul sings, except maybe Only You, has an essence of ooh, that was an embarrassing decision. Maybe you shouldn't have done that. But, as it stands, I understand why fans like this one the most on the album, because it's the heaviest cut. And so that makes sense why people would like the heaviest song.
I don't think that is an Ace solo. Look at what he did on Fridays when they played that song. Nothing whatsoever like what is on the album.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying.
It for 4 days. So
I'm saying what the Ace's solo. I think I remember reading that his solo got cut from this song. So what he did on Fridays is probably what was on the original album, but got cut.
Yeah, the Fridays one is a cool solo.
It is cool.
Julian, from what you obviously this all comes around to, I'm just going to have to read your book. But since we're talking about this song and others where Ace's absence are kind of mysterious, did in your research, do you have the impression that any of that was done out of spite because Ace was being difficult?
No, totally not. They worked at Ace's deliberately. They went back to Ace's. I mean, they started there. Ace went up to Toronto and worked with Bob on his own. So it's not a matter of spite. It really was, I think, it didn't fit, rather than being spiteful, kind of, cutting his work out. I would love to hear all that work that was cut out, and then we know if that Friday solo was the original solo and stuff like that, all those questions. So no spite whatsoever.
Okay.
Yep. So that is our ranking. Were you guys happy with the ranking? Any surprises?
Sounds good to me.
World Without Heroes and Dark Light ended up a lot higher than I expected.
I mean, well, you hate ballads and you hate Ace, so of course, like, not everyone hates ballads and Ace Frehley as much as you do, Steve.
True.
I thought Fanfare would have done better.
Really?
No.
Steve, you're gonna want to stay away from Ace's next project, which is a Burt Bacharach tribute album. Just stay away.
Nice.
Well, actually, this is good news for Steve. This is the last album with Ace Frehley for about, what, like 15, 20 years. So...
Na 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 na. Hey hey.
So, Steve, what do you think about the first album with Eric Carr? First album with a new member of Kiss?
It's a really weird way to gauge things because in so many ways this fundamentally isn't really a Kiss album. This was such a huge pivot from everything else they'd been doing so far that suddenly having a new drummer, of course it sounds different. How much of that can be accredited to the drummer, and how much of that do you attribute to just to being a weird thing?
It's almost like you can imagine his excitement coming in, getting ready to rock and kick some ass on a Kiss record for the first time, and it's almost like, on your marks, get set.
All right, here's
Hang
your
on.
timpani.
Yeah, right. Yeah, not just yet. Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll just have to do a couple more Kiss albums to find out what you think of Mr. Eric Carr.
Oh no, I suppose we'll probably do that.
Oh, you'll know by the next one. Promise you that.
Well, that is our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Excellent guests. Where can we find you on the internet? D.
Well, talldarkstranger.net, and of course, Facebook and all the usual places. Reverb Nation, we have pages there. Our last CD is available through CD Baby, and the new one that I'm getting mastered this coming week should be available within a month or two, also on CD Baby and iTunes. So look for us. Tall Dark Stranger. The new record's called Contramundum.
And Mr. Ken Mills, where can we find you on the internet?
Anywhere where justice needs to be served, I'll be there. And you can also find me at PodKISSt.com. You can also find our podcast about the monkeys, Zilch. Just do a search for Zilch, a Monkeys podcast. We do a show about Cheap Trick called Cheap Talk. And we do one about everything in pop culture. And Greg, you're actually going to be a guest on some of these mini podcast I'm doing now, where they're kind of like game shows. So check out Pop, a pop culture podcast, and do a search for Pop Staff if you can't find us. There's so many pop culture podcasts, but darn it, we are the one.
And Julian, where can people find you and purchase your book?
You can find me at KissFAQ.com or on Facebook, and all of the books that I've been a part of are up on Amazon.com, and many are on iTunes.
I have literally dozens of applause samples that I got from the BBC library they released a few weeks back. I only put one in here.
Of course. And Steve, you have a concept album coming out, don't you?
It's true. In mid-July, July 13th, in fact, Regdar and the Fighters will be releasing The Ballad of Constance and Johnny, our third full-length album and our long-awaited concept album about reincarnation and other shenanigans that doesn't make any sense. But it's got some fun songs. That'll be on all major platforms in mid-July. You can pre-order it even now as we speak on iTunes and Google and Amazon and most of those other services.
My favorite cut from the album is Escape from the Helicopter.
It's true.
And we are Lipstick. You can find us at lipstickgeneration.com. Buy our music. We've been compared to music from The Elder before as like, oh, it's like Kiss, but with a weird left turn and not as good. So if you love this album, you will love our band. Thank you so much. Have a good one, folks. Peace. Damn it, Steve.